Hey everybody, we're back for chapter 4 of When Bad Things Happen to Good People. In this chapter entitled No Exception for Nice People. Um, so he starts out talking about how people found reassuring proof in the stories of miracles, right? And he gets into the idea about science, and this is something we were kind of getting to in chapter 3, the idea that God's created this precise, orderly world. And one of the things that makes the world livable is the fact that laws of nature are precise and reliable, right? And this is the way that it works, right? Things like gravity. Here we're talking about nature, right? Nature is one of the issues that causes evil in the world. And so we have to address it and we have to disconnect it from God. It is part of the plan, right? The grand plan. And I guess I want to stop here and talk about maybe the game Monopoly, right? We've all played the game Monopoly, and it was created maybe in the 1920s in Atlantic City, and all the properties are streets in Atlantic City. So some woman put this all together. I forget her name, and we play it today. So if you and I are playing Monopoly, and say I roll and it's bad, and like I have to go to jail or whatever, I don't get to shake my fist at that lady who created Monopoly in the 1920s and say, "Darn you, you did this to me," as if she put me in jail. Now, did she create the set of rules by which I ended up in jail in 2020? Yes. But did she send me to jail? No. Right? So, in the same sense, did God create nature in the rules by which nature works? And nature works in powerful ways that are good 99% of the time. But those times that where nature happens to us, those are not God doing it to us. It is nature happening, right? And God isn't going to go and change the rules of the game in the middle of the game. We hate that when we play with little kids, right? You play with a little kid and he doesn't like the fact that he's losing, and so he wants to change the rules for him. We hate that. And so, in the same sense, that wouldn't work for us either. Jumping back to the book, um, I wanted to you would talk about like using the idea of gravity, right? Gravity, gravity good? Is it bad? Right? Like if I had to get out of my house right now, um, and you suddenly turn the gravity off, that would be terrible, right? It would take me forever to get out of my house. But if I were stepping off my roof, then gravity would be very bad. And so it's not gravity that's good or bad, it's the situations we find ourselves in, right? A hurricane is neither good nor bad, but it is depends on where we are, right? A hurricane that spins out the into the ocean is a good hurricane, and one that slams into the panhandle of Florida is a bad hurricane. No, it's just inconvenient or convenient for us, right? Um, so moving on, how would we live in the world if the laws changed for good or bad people? That would be crazy, right? Oh, if you're good, then you could just jump out the window and it wouldn't hurt, right? Good people, nothing bad happens to. Well, what happens if you forgot you did something wrong that day? That could be a problem. Um, so it wouldn't work. We wouldn't want a world that would work that way. I want to jump to page 69, where it says, people ask all the time, and really this is going to be one of the keys to the whole book. So don't tell anybody. It's this idea of, what did I do to deserve this? We hear this a lot as far as like people when they're struggling with problems, struggling with things in their life. They ask, well, what did I do to deserve this? You know, and it's in, and I want to kind of say that is kind of like blame based. I remember my wife, she used to say, um, if one of the kids got sick, the first thing she would say would be like, "Who got them sick?" Right? And she was always focused on like, how did they get sick and who could I blame? right? And it's always backward thinking. It's always past thinking. And what do you get out of that? What do you get out of figuring it out? And if you found out it was a cousin or a schoolmate or whatever that made the kid sick, you going to go yell at somebody, and is that going to make the kids better? No. So the real answer, the thing that we should be focused on, instead of the past tense, is more future tense here. The question, if this has happened to me, what do I do now? And who is there to help me with it? Where do I go from here? That's really the heart and soul of this idea, this answer of, how do I deal with bad things in my life? Moving forward, he talks about pain, right? Like, why do we have pain? That's nature, right? And I kind of go back to another analogy is my first car. My first car didn't have, it had a hole in the gas tank about halfway up, so it could only get gas, only about half a tank. And I had to keep going to the gas station all the time until it got even worse, where the gas gauge, like, didn't work. And so now, not only did I have half a gas tank, but I had no way of knowing where I was. And so I had to kind of make mental like kind of a mental note of where I was and how far I've gone. If my mom grabbed the car and used it for, hey, I went to the store, I'd be like, no, because like now I'm out of it. And these indicator lights on our dashboard. We hate them right when they come on, but if they didn't come on, we wouldn't know something was wrong. And in a lot of ways, all pain is a way for our bodies to tell us something's wrong. I'd like to see you guys try to take a piece of paper or something and put it up and on your dashboard when you're driving. No speedometer, no, no indicators at all, and see how stressful that is, right? We like to have those indicators. And pain is an indicator. It's not God doing something to us. It's our body telling us, hey, um, you know, something's wrong. He goes in and talk about familial dysautonomia, where a person is born without the ability to feel any pain, and it's dangerous. They end up dying. But that's the need for pain in our lives. Um, Also, he goes on to talk about death, right? Um, he talks about death as being a necessity of life. He uses um, that we kind of create these tragic situations for ourselves and as well. He talked about animals, they just grow sick and die. It's kind of like survival of the fittest, but human beings don't do that. He talked about on page like 76 where the guy with the congenital heart defect, he's born that way, but in the end, um, he lives a life because he was kept alive as an infant instead of just allowed to die. And um, and then he dies later at age 35 with a wife and kids, and maybe he was a teacher, so all the people love him, hopefully. And so suddenly it's a tragedy when it shouldn't have been. But human beings are not we're not going to ask human beings to go ahead and think in a different way like that. We're going to keep people alive because human beings do that, but we have to be ready for the consequences of that. That's just the part of of, of interesting of interfering with nature. And he kind of finishes the chapter. I kind of want to move quickly here and talk about. He talks about two books that he read. Homer, where one of the immortals was fascinated with Odysseus because he didn't live forever, and that was something that um, because suddenly everything you did had value because all the time we have you have to make choices, and that was an important thing. So life and death are just part of death and pain are part of our living, and to um, they help us to feel alive. It's part of the deal. It's part of the game of monopoly of our lives. Okay, see ya.